Today is June 5th, 2026. Whoops. June 5th, 2026. I woke up today and, honestly, I was feeling just kind of low. Low as usual. And I was thinking, about my life on the internet and about the fact that I've been here for pretty much 10 years and never really managed to build up much of a following. And I know it's not really good to think about those things because it's not really relevant. I mean, it's all just numbers on a website, and after all, the majority of YouTube is quite a lot of garbage in YouTube that gets, especially the really popular videos. And then if you consider, the actions of Google and Amazon, it's not really like a site that I'd want to be, closely associated with. But when there's a number, I can't help but get a little insecure about it. Just because, this is my life. This YouTube channel is pretty much the only, or at least one of the main things I focus on. And it was all really born out of just a sense of grief and loss, which is why I called my videos Million Gate Jump Grieving. Let's pretend like I'm not constantly feeling these gate jumps. It was a reference to the fact that really at first I came to YouTube just to try to sort all these ideas out, and I'm still doing that. Now I imagine that given the length of these videos and given the rate at which I produce them, I'm not going to get a ton of viewers and not a ton of attention, especially given YouTube's algorithm, especially given that across the board, political creators really are not doing well on the platform. You could argue that's censorship. You could argue it's a side effect of all the creators that constantly put out videos that are all about how Trump suffers humiliating loss. And then it's like, a judge wrote a really scathing letter, or Chuck Schumer, or Chris Murphy said something on the Senate floor. I'm not going to give slack to Chris Murphy, but it's far from a humiliating loss for a regime that really doesn't care about how it's viewed by anyone, as evident by how it blatantly continues to double down on how much they're going to fuck up the World Cup. With ICE and with the visa tariff, although now they're taking away the deposit, but they might put it back later, and they're angry that no one's celebrating the 250th birthday, and at the same time they clearly are not doing great in terms of tourism. Tourism metrics are down across the board. But none of that really matters, right? None of that really matters. Because what I've always tried to focus on in this series is the humanitarian cost. The idea that this is happening right now. People are suffering right now. It's not enough to just look at this and say, oh, capitalism is faltering, or oh, this will lead to an opportunity for progressive legislation. Like, we have concentration camps. We have children being traumatized. Parents being abducted and their children being left alone. We have people who are never going to see their classmates again, never going to see their friends again. And this terrorism is not being done by a criminal gang or by a foreign organization, because if it was, people would want executions. They want the death of all responsible, like we got after 9/11. No, this is being done by our government. Our tax dollars that are supposed to be used to keep our economy running are being used to run mass terrorism and to downsize the working class. All of this, for what? For what? To make it, it's not even to enrich the ultra-wealthy. It's about making a distraction for the people, the many white people who feel wronged by this regime, and it's used to suppress the many voices of color and the many queer voices that were speaking out against this regime. Truly, I believe the rise of Donald Trump was prompted, or at least encouraged, by the ultra-rich in response to the growing popularity of Occupy Wall Street, of the democratic socialist movement, of the progressive movements in this country. Because as it stands, the majority of progressive voices in this country, I mean, the majority of them, of the recent voices, they were gaining traction, serious traction. They were gaining popularity with organizations and groups that normally would not support democratic causes. Voices like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders from, the representative from New York, AOC is representative from New York, Bernie Sanders, senator from Vermont, and they were gaining popularity in states that were red, like extremely red, because those states care about their unions and they care about their medical costs. They might not care about, they might not want to even entertain the thought of slavery reparations or of equality and queer rights, but the states do want to, they do care about the cost of electricity, the cost of water. And it also, a part of that factor is that things have just gotten so fucking off the rails. They've just gone so far out of the realm of tolerability. And I've said this in a lot of my videos, and I'll say it again. This is not normal. And this is nowhere near a normal. We're talking about machines that burn up all the power, that get it funded by the state government for some reason, private data centers, boiling, evaporating water, all of this to create a landmark that pollutes the local environment. And not like in a climate change, the icebergs are melting kind of way, but more in a, this thing is creating noise and lowering our water pressure and spiking up our electricity costs kind of way. The kind of environmental damage that people see. People see it now. Even in the world of short-term politics and fuck you, I've got mine mentality, people see this and they do not like these data centers. The only reason that big tech has been able to amass the power it has is through two principles. You've probably heard of these. The first one being move fast and break things, Silicon Valley's golden rule. That's how we got e-scooters all over our streets. That's how we got Uber and DoorDash taking over our local delivery businesses, And the second being outright bribery. Like, genuine just bribing politicians to an unbelievably blatant degree. And of course, both of these have been fueled with the money of venture capital. And between that and the power of capitalism, the sheer strength of all of these forces, I understand why a lot of people feel a lack of hope. And I hope I have not furthered that. I don't want to make people think that there's no point in fighting. In fact, that's exactly the opposite of what I want people to think, and that's exactly why I created this channel. Because I was hearing constant voices in the in the aftermath of Donald Trump's re-election, of the rise of Christo-fascist populism across the country. I was hearing constant voices saying, we just have to hang in there until the midterms, or talking about leaving the country. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Defeatism is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if everyone in this country that opposes Christo-fascism, if we all leave, then what will America become? It'll become a global terrorist. Well, it already is. It already has been a global terrorist for decades. And it will continue to terrorize the world. Just now with absolutely no resistance from inside. And that's how America will fall. If it will fall, this country will fall from the people inside. We are the 99.9%. Although many, as we saw, it was like 67%, supported the rise of Donald Trump. I don't think it's the case anymore that the majority of this country supports the rise of Donald Trump. I think the majority of this country may support the rise of any populist voice that promises them a better future, but Donald Trump isn't that anymore. And if we can use those voices, there's power in those voices and in those bodies. Especially as the majority of people who own guns usually, traditionally, have been right-leaning folks, Republican folks. Now I think that's changing, in part because a lot of queer voices and liberal voices are arming themselves, which is very good to see. And in part because a lot of people that supported Donald Trump are now feeling betrayed. I mean, between his backing of Israel, between all the tariffs that have destroyed industries, the blatant alignment with big tech and with our dystopian surveillance networks. Not that this is new, but it's very blatant. And I think with the blatantness of it, with the obviousness of it, with the how in your face the aspects are, those voices are beginning to turn their back on the Republican Party and on American traditional government as a whole. And I've said this constantly, and I'll say it again. If those folks take up pipe bombs, and half of those pipe bombs, if they start rigging together pipe bombs, and half of them go to the DNC, and half of them go to the RNC, 100% of them are going to save America. Both of these organizations, the DNC and the RNC, have worked in tandem to destroy the American people, to destroy and silence our voices, to quell our dissent. We need both of them gone. Not every Republican, not every Democrat. I mean, on the Republican side, Thomas Massie, he's always seemed to be a voice for pragmatist, anti-surveillance, independence. The ideas that originally had people buying onto the Republican Party before Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, took that into a bigotry-centered hate group that just restricts freedoms and worships big billionaire leaders because of Eisenhower's government under God mentality and the whole idea that billionaires are somehow given some divine right to rule over this country. A mentality which, by the way, has been legitimized by the Democrats because they keep on taking money from those people. They keep on serving the will of those people. Like, sure, Democrats won't say that America is run by God and therefore the billionaires have a God-given right, but they will say that the billionaires have a money-given right to run their seats. So, what does it really matter in the end, right? It's all just a veneer of different ideology, none of which really makes a difference when, in the end, everyone's funneling their money to the same destructive causes. No, I don't believe that it would be right to lose hope, and I also don't believe that it's right to put full faith in any institution of our government, because every institution of our government has failed wholly failed. The fact that we have concentration camps in this country is enough evidence that we have failed. The fact that ICE walks our streets instead of stalking our prisons is proof that we have failed. The fact Donald Trump was able to incite an insurrection, be able to run for president, win the re-election, and then pardon those who helped his insurrection attempt, and then give them $1.776 billion is enough proof that our government has wholeheartedly failed. Our institutions have failed. Our society has failed. The answer is not to leave, because what are we leaving behind? If we let this country fall to the techno-fascists, we're going to have a terrorist force that will take over the entire world. I wholeheartedly believe it. Wholeheartedly. Because this government is aligned with the interests of Russia, or at least as a tool of Russia. And I'm certain that these foreign powers, North Korea, Russia, will continue to use the USA as leverage for fascism to take over the entire world. Whether it's by the US military or the Russian military or the North Korean, well, I mean, North Korea is going to be an asset to other countries, because let's be honest, North Korea can't really take over anything. But they do have nukes, and they can be a bargaining chip, and they can be a force of aggression and destabilization, as they regularly have been. No, the answer is not to leave, and the answer is not to trust our institutions, because both of these solutions have very clear consequences that will lead to the destruction of humanity as a whole. The answer, I strongly believe, is a broadly distributed, piecemeal collection of dissent. A broad, piecemeal collection of dissent. A fragmented, yet united in common principles, series of individual actors, mainly lone wolf actors, which is why I have spent my entire last year and a half trying to highlight those voices, trying to speak in defense of those voices, of those who have determined, rightfully so, that this is an intolerable situation to live in, and that it is better to die and have your life mean something than to slowly rot away under the pressures of fascism and the American economy, capitalism, techno-feudalism, whatever it may be, dark enlightenment, or whatever Silicon Valley will subscribe to. No. These voices, including the one that I had the privilege of being closest to, being Zhangyan, also known as Day Rock Project, who blew up Elon Musk's cum, you know, voices like these have given us hope in the darkest of times. They've proven that ICE and the US government is not infallible. In fact, the FBI is incredibly weak. And I'm glad that Tyler Robinson, in The Killing of Charlie Kirk, highlighted the sheer incompetency of the FBI, as did the killer of Brian Thompson. I mean, y'all, it was 10 days to find a suspect they could pin it on. Who even knows if Luigi Mangione is even the guy? And in the case of Edward Guy Christensen, who is the guy, and his sponsor and mentor, Zhangyan Day Rock Project, in the case of these individuals, regardless of the actual federal investigations that have taken place afterwards, they prove that you could do a fuck ton of damage before the FBI even knows there's something to investigate. And that's the message I want us to take away. I want us to take away the images of individual, even children, even teenagers, punching fascists in the face. I want us to take away the message, the image, the vision of leftists shooting ICE agents, of women burning down ICE warehouses. That is what I want America to take away from this. That is why I keep on making these videos. That is why I will never stop making these videos, because I need America to understand, the Americans to understand, that you do not just have to bury yourself in your room and shield yourself from the world. And I say that as someone who did that. And you also do not have to run away and hide and announce that America is a lost cause and cull the ship, scuttle the ship. You don't have to do either of those. And both of those are devastating and will end with us dying. We will all die if the masses adopt that mentality. It's convenient and it's comforting, but it is not a future. It's not just enough to find a way to make enough money to be able to order food to your house and maybe, you know, acquire enough for, like, basic luxuries and to be able to, like, subscribe to some OnlyFans, order DoorDash to your door, jerk off to pornography, and that's free. That's free if you have a computer, which, granted, is going to be a increasing luxury. None of that is necessary because we still have our bodies, we still have our minds, we have not yet been enslaved by the machines. ChatGPT is a prompt that can be closed. Copilot is a pop-up that can be ignored and uninstalled on your Windows 10 computer, and probably your Windows 11 too. I just can't speak to that myself. I have never experienced that because you don't have to upgrade to Windows 11. You could use Linux. You can use Linux, and you should. Use Linux. Use LibreOffice instead of Microsoft's Office Suite. Use Libre. Use free open source software. You know, these are the little actions that can pave the road for the bigger actions. And please do not run your anarchist networks through Meta or Google Suite. Please use open source software and decentralized platforms, such as Harmony, which is a Discord alternative that I have been finding a lot of comfort in. And I think it has the potential to really be the next Discord platform. It is still in development, but it is coming along quite well. So shout out to Harmony. Tool against fascism right there. In line with this mentality and this whole speech that I just gave, I want to highlight in my next couple of videos, I want to highlight a couple of voices that I found very comforting, very affirming, very useful and resourceful, and which have been guiding lights for me to follow in the online creator ecosystem. And I will be doing that with the next video. Probably one video for each creator. I just want to go through in no particular order and just highlight these many voices, because there have been a lot of people that have used their platform and their luxury, because it is a luxury to be able to make content online. It is a luxury. And they've used that luxury to stand up to fascism, to stand up to corporations, to stand up to big tech, and to slowly erode away at this idea that the government is good, that these corporations and billionaires are decent people, and or that this future that they propose is inevitable. Because let's be honest, folks, we outnumber them in the hundreds of thousands to every one of these executives. Even if you just count the entire board of executives of all these big corps, Amazon, Meta, Google, Palantir. Like, at the end of the day, if one person wanted to, they could storm one of their board meetings with, like, maybe 5 other teammates and just execute all of them from one of these corporations. And then those folks are gone. You know, the idea that we're helpless is based on the notion that we have to follow the law. That is a liberal idea, which is inherently wrong, which has never been the case in our society. Because even when it was majority nonviolent, and I say majority because it was never wholly nonviolent, when these movements were largely nonviolent, they still broke the law, and they still involved undermining the systems. And they're using strategies which made sense for the time. The civil rights movement action of, like, just everyone breaking the law together so they can't arrest all of us, that will not work anymore. They have massive amounts of private prisons, which will rape your mind, rape your body, and break your soul. No, we have to use different tools, and we have different tools. Mass anonymity on the internet, because their ID verification has not yet taken hold. We also have the anonymity of just being able to cover our masks, cover our faces with masks, go out in public, go out in black box. Sorry, go out in black bloc, which is a type of, you know, full concealment with largely unrecognizable garments. Wear a hoodie, preferably a black one. Wear a a face mask, one of those surgeon's masks or those actual really effective masks, whichever it is. We're still in a pandemic, folks. Whether Joe Biden or Donald Trump are the ones declaring it's over, it's not true. We're in a pandemic of COVID. We're also in a pandemic of the hantavirus and Ebola in Africa. But we're also in a pandemic of a different type of disease, a disease of fascism. And that, too, can be protected against by wearing a mask and a hoodie and full-length pants and having gloves and no identifiable markings on your body. The notion that we're powerless is exactly what our oppressors want us to believe. We are quite the opposite, evidently. We are only as powerless as we declare ourselves to be. And it's when we shut ourselves away, as I did years ago, shut ourselves away in our rooms, in our apartments, in our basements, our parents' basements, and we declare that it's all lost and that we're cooked, that's when we are powerless. Because no one is going to save us. No vote is going to single-handedly save us. But we have so much power because we are individual people with our own minds. They cannot read our minds. They cannot determine what we are going to do. Their predictive policing networks are just racial biases, which makes it all the more important, especially if you are of a demographic that is traditionally not associated with criminality, aka if you are a white person, if you are a feminine presenting person, either one of those, it is all the more essential that you stand up against fascism and that you use your power to liberate those who are being oppressed. I will end with this final thought. All too often, society tells us that violence is inherently evil. But there is a significant difference between the violence of the oppressor and the violence against the oppressor. Because to burn down a warehouse that is going to be used for the mass systemic genocide of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not tens of millions, to use violence to destroy that is an act of peace, and an act of justice, and an act of dignity. So whatever it is that you target, concentration camps of any type, be it against the marginalized, be it against children, be it against political dissidents, be it against folks of color. Stand up to all of this oppression. And do not be afraid to be violent, because history will redeem you. And I will do my part to make sure that message is spread. And I ask that those who are not in the position to physically go out and do those actions, that you repeat the same values, that you highlight the same mentality. That we can have no justice, no peace until there is justice. We can have no justice until the wrongs are mended. Until the wrongs, the folks that did the wrongs, face accountability. There will be no justice, and we will not let them have peace. Because peace through suppression, peace through silencing, through muzzlement, is fascism. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to this. Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. I will respond to every comment. If you have ideas for future videos, I will highlight your voice. I will always keep this channel interactive, whether I have 70 subscribers or 700 subscribers, or 700,000 subscribers, which, you know, dream big, I suppose, right? All right, thank you very much for watching.